All right, and we're rolling. So, sorry. So we had an interview early today, and so we were talking about. Tavis has been sending me several properties to do comps on, and so it's great because I need the experience on doing comps, and it's one of those things we've talked about a ton on the podcast. I think it's a skill that most people are not good at, and especially in the investment world, a lot of wholesalers, but even I don't care who you are, a lot of people are not good at comping houses, and there's just a lot of nuances to it. Anyway, Tavis has been sending me stuff to make sure that I know what I'm, kind of learning how to do. And so we use this one program called Cloud CMA, and Tavis is always really nice and clean and real professional looking, and I'm learning how to use it, and whatever I'm sending is just the biggest pile of junk because you have to weed through 50 pages of just weird little factoids of how to sell a house, and it just automatically adds all these things in, and I'm just trying to send 9 properties over to take a look at it. The nice thing about it is it's live. You can look through the listing, and it's a lot more dynamic than just sending a PDF that has some listings on it. But Tavis, that's one of those things he's used for a long time. It's funny because on the technology side, in fairness, most of the time I've got a few more things figured out on technology than Tavis, as far as the computer and podcasting, all that. But there's definitely in your world though, in your lane, you've got some stuff that it's like, for instance, this last week with the contract with the condo, I made several mistakes. In fairness, it was 49 pages that I had to send over between the seller's disclosures and all the new Keller Williams forms we have to send for compliance. And a lot of that has to do with the lawyers wanting this and this. And I was trying to front load a lot of it. It was 49 pages on the contract that I needed to put signatures and initials and all that stuff. Well, of course, I missed a box here, and then I transposed. The seller was in the wrong area and the buyer was in the wrong area. I messed up a few things, and so I'm talking to Tavis. I'm like, well, how do you do this? He's like, man, I don't know. I just do it. I don't. So he's just been doing it for so long on the same system that there's some of that stuff you just don't even really know. But on the Cloud CMA, I'm getting better and learning how to comp. He's been sending me all sorts of comps to look at, and it's great for your brain to just work through that. And it would be fun to sit down with 2 or 3 people and just say, hey, I want to watch you comp something really quick, because just to see the workflow, because I do it a certain way. I pull up Google Maps, I pull up Google Earth, I pull up the tax roll on Netris on our MLS, and then I look at the listings and I look at a map. I kind of back into it a certain way. It would be really nice to see what other people look at. But when you make a mistake, it's like, okay, well, I wish I had. So now I look at Google Earth every time. Okay, where am I in proximity to the neighborhoods and power lines and lakes and all that? And I look at the Google Maps. I will walk down the street digitally. I'll walk down the street, look at the neighbors, look is this house normal for the neighborhood? Is this an exceptionally nice house for the neighborhood? Whatever. So I kind of go through that on all those. And anyway,
it's also an easy way to see if it's a 1-story or a 2-story, because a lot of times just looking at tax rolls, you don't know that. I don't know how many times I will pull up tax rolls, run comps, drive the home, never pulled up Google Earth and go to it. I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
Like, this is a 2-story, all bedrooms are up. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta revisit this thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know. Like, I mean, it's hard to get that information because it's not on the tax rolls unless it's like a previous listing and you can see in the description, or an agent actually filled out the what room, what level the room is on. But that's an option. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, but
So
it's a
a
nice
lot of
option when
don't
agents do
it.
that. It's nice. It's very
It
nice.
is nice, but it doesn't get done very often. So,
No.
like that one we went and looked at in the colony last week, I had no idea until we got there. And then I'm like, oh no, all the bedrooms are up. And, it threw off my comps, and I had to go back and revisit and, rework it. So,
Well, how's
but
the
yeah,
how's the
we
flip
need to
doing
sit
over
down
in
and go over that.
yeah, we need to go over it because you're really good at that, and yours always look really nice, and I want to be able to give you good information. And I don't think you're abusing me. I'm learning. I'm trying. So I know I explained it in the intro, but I do work full time as a physical therapist assistant. We've got a few people out of town. I did officially go what's called PRN. I'm getting paid per visit. I'm not getting benefits anymore. So I'm going on to Karen's benefits. Karen, my wife, works for the same company. So things are changing a little bit, how we structure things. But at the end of the day, I still do therapy. I need it for income. And I have a really good area right now. I work mostly in Carrollton and, I can't complain. But we have a few people out of town and I've been really busy this week. And last week was getting there and next week's going to be that way. And so it's just one of those times where, okay, I want to progress my real estate business. I want to flip something. I'd like to sell more houses. I've got a condo under contract right now. I'm also doing social media to try to help with income. And I've gotten the skill set with doing the podcast and doing reels for me and doing some reels for Tavis, and that a few people have reached out. And now I'm actually working with a friend, Jenny Labello. She owns a marketing agency, a digital marketing agency. And she said, look, if you ever, I've got a few people that need help with podcast. If you're interested, just let me know. So I said, sure. And so I'm starting to help with the podcast. I've got a Southern gospel group. I'm doing their reels now. So I'm getting some Southern gospel in my life, trying to look at that stuff. So, but I think from an income standpoint, that's going to help me actually get a baseline of income every month to walk away from therapy at some point. And I can work from the house. I can block my time. The same workflow that we're using for the podcast and for our reels, it'll actually just complement what I'm doing more. And the biggest thing for me, I think, is blocking time. I mean, we've talked to so many people on our interviews that are really high level. And this idea of trying to be able to say, look, my morning is this, my afternoon's this, Mondays are for this, Wednesdays are for this, and trying to have some structure, because one of the biggest downsides of therapy right now is it's just so unpredictable. And one day I may start out with 10 patients, but it quickly whittles down to 7 because people don't call me back. Then that whittles down to 5 because someone went to the hospital. And then they add one to me late in the afternoon. I've got to rush back out and go see somebody. It's just how it is. And it's been that way for 10 years. And that's the nature of that business. And so it's really hard to say, hey, I'm going to go walk someone through a house at 5 p.m. today, or I'm going to go try to walk a house with Tavis at 4:30 and know for sure I can be there at 4:30. It just makes it difficult. So doing the social media stuff, I think, is going to really complement it more. So I'm working into that. But the friction point between building up a clientele with the social media and still doing therapy and still doing real estate and trying to find something to flip, and not being a horrible husband and father in the process, it becomes stressful. And trying to make sure you're doing a good job is kind of the trick of things. But if you're out there, look, we've heard from a lot of people that listen to the podcast, and I know a lot of people are full-time pros like Tavis. They've got established businesses and they do a good job, and that comes with its own set of stresses. But a lot of people that are listening are kind of in my boat, where you're a newbie to the real estate. You're trying to learn, you're trying to break through, you're trying to do a project here and there, and you're trying to work it into your job in your life. And I'm with you, man. It's tough. Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's something you want to throw on Instagram and be really proud of. And sometimes you just want to just curl up in a corner and, find the finest tequila that's around. It's like, that's just how it is. Like, I don't, I wish it was better. But there's just days where it's stressful,
And let me add to this, because we talked about this before, but I think it's pretty consistent. Anybody we talk to in our industry right now, in other industry, I mean, the economic environment that we live in today, with inflation where it is, and all these different challenges that we've had just in general economics, are tough on everybody right now. Interest rates going up, consumer debt's gone up. There's a lot of different factors that have made things challenging. And everybody's cost of living's gone up. You name it, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
Just to put it this way, I mean, the average rental market right now in Plano, for instance, I've got some friends, close friends of mine that are looking for a property here in Plano right now, trying to get out of an apartment because they've been paying $1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on the edge of Plano, Dallas. It's over there, kind of by you, but George Bush and Midway area, and her rent's increasing by over 10%. So it's going from like 1,800 and change to over $2,000 a month.
Hmm.
and for an apartment. And so she's looking for a house. And I mean, it averages. I mean, the rents have come down from what they were last year, so it's stabilized a little bit better. But I mean, still $2,200 to $2,300 a month for
Yeah.
a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and this could be 1,400 square feet. So uh, it's when you think about that, of that being your rent, right? Going back, I mean, like, it just, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, a
It
couple of
adds
years
up
ago,
fast.
a couple of years ago, my son bought his house. It was a, $400,000 home. He put a bunch of money down. But anyways, let's just put it this way: loan amount was in the low threes, right, or the mid, or like 330. Okay, loan amount was in the 330. So PITI was like 2,300 and change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you think about that. I mean, that's what you're buying a home for. And that's what your mortgage payment is on something like that. And I think that interest rate was probably around 5%. That number now is, in the high sixes to sevens. So that number is probably closer to $3,000 a month now. But I mean, that's a lot. You think
Mm-hmm.
about it. I mean, you think about back in the day, $3,000 a month was affording you, a $500,000 house
The
not too long
finest
ago
of
when interest
homes.
rates were low, So it's just everybody's struggling. Everyone's had a hard time, and
Yep.
anybody I talked to in the industry, I was talking to a buddy of mine, Kip Callahan, Chicago Title. Shout out if you're listening. But he, he's in the title side, and business is down, man.
Yep.
Things are tough, and these guys work 100% off of commission. So it's everybody's struggling. Everybody's fighting this. So not only are you in a tough situation of trying to transition industries from what you're doing day to day and trying to transition into a different industry, this industry is struggling. Every industry is struggling. So trying to transition out by itself in a flourishing industry, in a flourishing market, when things are all good, like they were a couple of years ago, when interest rates are low, and you put a sign in the yard and the house, gets 50 offers on it, and you wave your flag that you're a real estate agent, and and all your friends and family are like, heck yeah, I want to take advantage of this 3% interest rate. Um, that's not happening right now.
Yeah.
So just keep it on, man. Just keep your head positive, keep moving forward. And that's why we're bringing in different guests that we've had that are talking not only about real estate, but just talking mindset, talking struggles, talking,
Yep.
challenges, talking, what they've had to do, their hardships in life, their hardships in trying to transition businesses. I mean, Walter talked a couple of weeks ago about his advertising firm and his agency, and having to put up 2 years of reserves. I mean, holy crap,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, um, to build 2 years reserves before he decided that he was done with corporate America and he was going to transition out.
Yeah.
So look, man, nothing happens overnight. You're on the right track. Just keep your head up, keep
Keep
moving
on
forward, and
trucking. Yep.
um,
Just
that's
put another foot out the next day and just keep on going. And yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. We're here to learn, we're here to meet people. And if you're trying to get into real estate and you're wanting to invest in something, or you're wanting to, be an agent, just doing the best you can to equip yourself with the knowledge. We talked, our last interview, Jordan, it'll be coming out, I think, in a week and a half or so, just talking about going to open houses, having conversations, having real conversations with people, because whenever you do have a conversation that could lead to money, you're better equipped. And so listening to podcasts, reading books, doing all the things you can do to become knowledgeable, there's nothing wrong with that. And,
and
but
just stay
continue to,
consistent.
yeah, stay consistent, put yourself out there, put yourself around people that know what they're doing. And that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. Cause I get to hang out with Tavis and get to meet a lot of people that are doing this day in and day out. So let's get into a little bit of a market update. So speaking of business is happening, right? So we were just saying, yeah, it's slow. It's not like it was, but business is happening. I'm looking at the MLS right now. I look at closed sales, and in March, let's see, in April, closed sales, our entire MLS, which is pretty big, 110,000 closed sales. Denton County, 14,000. Collin County, 15,000. So that's the other thing. Like I can sit here and lament and, oh man, tough. There's thousands of homes being sold every month, and there's people out there flipping houses. So there are people getting business done. So that's the flip side. You can feel bad, you can whatever, but there's someone figured it out. Someone is figuring it out. So putting yourself in a position to figure it out is definitely possible. That being said, it is down. Sales are down. Inventory's up. We talked about last week. It's about the same as last week. Sales are down about 0.5% year over year. Inventory's up 4.5% year over year. It's climbing, and the days on market are definitely climbing. The average days on market are in the 40s now. Like I said last week, the condo that we put a contract on, it was mid 40s. It was falling right in line with that. Our offer was about 96% of asking, which is also on trends with our MLS. Everything's selling for roughly 96, 97% of asking. And shows per pending, I think, has been averaging around 11, 12, depending on which county you're in. So things are moving. It's just taking a little bit longer. You're having to reach out to people, trying to get things done. You may have to discount it just a little bit in order to sell it. But the encouraging number is the one that shows the actual units sold. It's in the thousands, tens of thousands across our MLS. So things are happening, things are moving. You just got to put yourself out there. So as far as mortgage rates goes, it did tick down a little bit this last week. We in the mid 7.7. Last week it showed 7.9. Fluctuates a little bit, but you're in the mid to high sevens to get in. And I will say this: I got a text from my friend over at DR Horton, my sales rep at DR Horton, and he sent this yesterday. Just announced agents are getting 3% plus a $5,000 agent bonus. 3% plus 5,000. So all this,
Okay.
Oh, who's going to get paid? Oh, we're going to quit paying agents. No, DR Horton, thank you for putting a line in the sand. A huge company. They take a lot of crap for quality and stuff like that. But I've put up hundreds of blinds for DR Horton in my life. A long time ago, I was a blind guy, and we put up for DR Horton. So they hold a special place.
Now you can see.
That's right. And so we always wanted to open. There is a company called the Blind Guys, which is really funny. But so not only 3% plus 5% agent bonus. Okay, you buy the house, free blinds, free fridge, free garage door opener, $13,500 paid at closing. They are doing a 1 year buy down to 4.75, and at year 2 through 30, it's 5.75 for FHA. And conventional, they're doing a 1 year buy down to 4.99, and then their 30-year rate is 5.99. That's insane, especially with the rates today. So, in this market, we've talked about there's a lot of the new builders are going to be really aggressive. They've probably overbuilt a little bit. They're trying to get out there. They want to move inventory. They're publicly traded companies. They have to generate profit for their shareholders. They're making deals and they're getting it done. So if you're looking to buy, and even on the investment side, I've talked to a few of my investors about new builds. It's possible. You can get in there and try to find something that can cash flow, especially if you want to put a decent down payment. So don't sleep on your new builders and your DR Hortons and that sort of thing. Lennar, be careful on Lennar. Lennar's being cheap. Let's put it that way. Lennar's being cheap towards the real estate agents, and so there is a disparity there. It's funny. The budget people kind of are handling it differently. But I know DR Horton and several other ones, Starlight, LGI, some of the other ones in the similar vein, doing a good job trying to take care of people. So why don't we get to a little bit of news? So we've talked about it before. Garland is a favorite of ours. Tavis has done a lot of business in Garland. How many of your flips, if you had to sort of put a percentage of ones, what do you think your Garland percentage is?
It's a good question. I mean, over the last couple of years, it's probably pretty good market share.
Yeah, you've done a lot since I've known you over there.
Yeah, I would say it's upward of 50% probably. It's just kind of the way that the leads have kind of fallen and the opportunities,
well, it's the right age, so Garland is just a little bit northeast of, the heart of downtown Dallas, near Mesquite,
Yep.
borders Plano, borders Richardson.
It's
Garland's a huge
still
town. I think it actually
price
might be
points.
the second largest town next to Dallas from a square mile, like a
It's a
mileage.
huge. It is a very large city. It's a very large city, and it's kind of weird because of the way that it kind of wraps around. Right, it borders
Yep.
up to Mesquite. I mean, it borders, up to Rowlett, and then it borders to, you know,
Plano,
Sachse
Richardson,
and
Dallas. Yep.
uh, Plano, Richardson. Yeah, it touches a lot of space, right? So,
It's huge. But it was
um,
built probably what in the like early 70s to
anything
early
from the
80s.
'60s. Well, there's probably some stuff in the '50s. There might have been some
Really?
stuff prior to that, probably near closer downtown. But stuff I've seen is anything from '50s, '60s, upward to the '90s, right? So
Okay.
last year I did a property that was in the '90s.
Up near
It was on
Firewheel, that
Echo. I think
area.
one of the first properties you had walked
Yeah.
with me that I was involved in. Yeah, there's been several, and then of course, I was able to pick up that strip center in
Yep.
Garland. 2 years ago, anniversary coming up here at the end of this month. So,
All right. We'll have to go get some
but
dessert at La
yeah, no,
Marquesita.
it's just been yeah, it's been. And I've got a rental there. I've got a single family rental there. Done several flips there. I think it's a good market, and we've got a new one that's actually Richardson ISD, but it's City of Garland, that I picked up, that we're closing next week.
Nice.
And but it's a good first time home buyer price point, and
Yep.
location wise, I mean, location's pretty good. You can get around pretty easy. I mean, now with George Bush I-90 kind of surrounding all of Garland,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you're South Garland, there's even parts of Garland go south of I-30 even. So it is a pretty big town when you
Yeah,
think
it's
about
huge. It's
south of
huge.
I-30 all the way north of I-90. The border of Garland goes all the way up. I think Garland even borders up to potentially up to Wiley. I know
Mm.
it borders to Murphy and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
anyways,
in the
um,
news, our friends in
yeah,
Garland are
we're
one of
going
our
on a
favorite
rampage here.
one of our favorite towns. Garland is possibly getting a huge development. Not the sexy shopping center with Tiger Woods golf like we have near here. Our favorite Grandscape, where we talk about every week the newest restaurant that's going in there and cigar bar. Garland's not going to be that. No one's opening up that down in Garland. It's a little bit more gritty, a little bit more blue collar. They possibly could be getting a $1.3 billion warehouse sort of manufacturing development there. There's a company that's going to be bringing in $3 billion to DFW, part of it over in Fort Worth, part of it over in Garland, and they say it could bring up to 1,000 jobs to that area, which would be really awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime an older part of town, and we've seen it a lot actually down south of Dallas, Lancaster, the DeSoto area, Red Oak, on the south edge of Dallas going towards Waxahachie. It's become a huge warehouse hub, and a lot of large companies have their delivery hubs there, millions of square feet there that are leased out. That's become a huge development area. But anytime you see another older part of town, Mesquite, Garland, something like that, getting an influx of $1.3 billion of just construction jobs and activity, and people going to have to be around there eating lunch and doing all that stuff all day, every day, and then bringing in those jobs, it's awesome. And for someone like you that has sort of picked that area as a great place to invest, I can't imagine that's going to be anything but awesome for that type of person that's going to be flipping, finding rentals for people, and that sort of thing. So I was really excited to see that.
Well, especially industrial, because there is a lot of labor, right? That has to fulfill that job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's drivers, there's warehouse people, there's personnel, there's logistic. Obviously a lot of logistics that come along with it. Accounting and all kinds of different range of positions that
Yep.
would fulfill those jobs. I'm curious where it is. Did it say
It doesn't say
proximity
across
wise? I would
street.
imagine that it's got to be somewhat near highways.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Um,
doesn't say that specifics yet. I think it was a little bit more of a generic, hey, this company's talking about coming to town. They're trying to get it figured out.
got it.
I'm sure it'll pop up, a little bit more specific, but yeah.
Yeah. That'd be
we're
great.
crossing our fingers for our friends in Garland. But so other news, not necessarily development news, although it was a year ago. Uh, we talked last week about how the professional WNBA team is going to be going to downtown Dallas. They're putting, I think, $3 billion into the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center down there. Part of that seems to be going towards a stadium for the basketball team, the women's basketball team. And then randomly this week, it popped up in the news that so 2 years ago over in Grand Prairie is another little suburb, kind of interesting. It's where our horse track is. That's the only reason I've ever. Well, no, I've been to a couple concerts. They have a big concert venue over there. We've seen a few concerts and comedians there, but they have the horse track. So Lone Star Park is our only legal betting around here. So if that's your thing, you've got to go to Grand Prairie, and you can go to Lone Star. I've done a couple open houses down there, just kind of get familiar with the location. But that's kind of my experience with Grand Prairie. Well, 2 years ago, they built, in my opinion, so random, a professional. They developed this. There's a bunch of building going on. We had gone to this concert. I'm like, what are they building right there? It was a cricket stadium. I'm like, cricket? Like the idea that we have that much demand in this area. I mean, we have an eclectic mix of people from all over the world. And there are a lot of folks from India and Pakistan. I've had a lot of patients that are from India and Pakistan, and cricket's huge there. I actually had a patient who was a professional cricket player. He would be watching it every time I was at the house, and he kind of explained the rules. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. It's also huge in England and Scotland and those areas, and I think some of the colonial, like Australia, New Zealand. So it's huge.
Even some of the Caribbean islands, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they were developed out of the British,
Britain.
right? So they were British colonies that,
yes,
continue those trends.
Yep, cricket and rugby and that sort of thing. So cricket is the kind of this random thing. But in Plano, you'll be driving down Plano up off of McDermott, North Plano, and they converted a lot of that park up there, Russell Creek, into cricket fields. And I thought that was great. So you see that. Well, then they're developing this professional. They're putting a lot of money into this development of this professional cricket stadium. Well, it popped up this week that their season evidently is extremely short. I think it's only a month long, but there is a Dallas has a professional cricket team, and they bring in. There's only 2 stadiums. I think there's one here and maybe one up in North Carolina, but there's, I think, maybe 8 or 10 teams all over the country. And they sort of bounce between these 2 professional stadiums. They do these, week-long tournaments where they're going to play 2 or 3 teams in a row, and then they'll move on. But it only lasts about a month to 6 weeks, and it's not terribly hot yet. And I would not be against going out and at least trying to take in one cricket game, just because I think it would be interesting. Some of them can be days long, but this is a format that actually only takes, I think, a handful of hours. So I'm interested, but it got me thinking, just a little Dallas trivia. If you had to guess, I looked this up before this, but I was doing the mental checklist. If you had to guess, you've been here a long time. How many professional sports teams does DFW have? And I'm not, obviously the big 4, the Rangers, the Cowboys, the hockey team, the Stars and the Mavericks, they're in the playoffs right now. Big 4, we know about that. But there are other professional teams here where people on small and big levels get paid to play sports. So if you had to guess, what would you put that number at?
I would say it's over 10.
Yeah.
I would say over 10 without sitting here and adding up every detail. Because we have the G Leagues.
G League is the Mavericks. Yes, there's the kind of the minor league for the Mavericks.
We got the Legends.
The Legends, that's them. You got the Frisco Rough Riders, which is the minor league.
The Frisco Rough Riders. But
for the Rangers.
And of course, we've got soccer.
FC Dallas.
FC Dallas. And
then Frisco.
Now we've got the women's basketball team.
Yes, I think they're the Wings, maybe.
Yep, the Dallas Wings. And then we have, do we have a farm hockey team? I don't think we do.
Yes, we do. Up in Allen.
It's in Allen. That's right.
Allen Americans.
Okay.
They're the minor league hockey team up there. So you go Allen Americans. Every team kind of has their own minor league stuff. And then I guess there's even 2 or 3 levels.
Then we have the football, right? Don't we have
Yep, the Renegades. That's they actually play at the old Texas Rangers Stadium. The Dallas Renegades. They one. I don't know what league it's in, but it's some kind of offshoot of the NFL. Sort of either people who didn't make the NFL or old NFL players are playing football. But yeah, the Dallas Renegades, and so they're there. So yeah, when you start looking at it, I think we have maybe a professional softball team. We have a professional lacrosse team. We have a
Mm.
professional. Let's see what. Well, now the cricket we were just talking about, and then there's 2 or 3 levels of soccer. There's indoor soccer. I know there's a few of those types of leagues, and then this article actually there's a professional esports team based in Dallas. They're actually based in Frisco.
Oh wow.
They're spending thousands. I think there's a 12,000 person indoor stadium for just esports, where
Wow.
people come in from all over the country and watch people play video games. But it's a huge deal. So yeah, when you add them all up, the list I saw 21,
Wow.
21 professional teams call Dallas home. And so we always talk about the Mavericks and the Stars and the Cowboys and the Rangers and a
Let's go
few of the
Mavericks.
offshoots, but go Mavericks, man! They fell apart last night. They lost their first round. They lost the first round game.
Stars won though.
No, they
Stars
didn't.
pulled it off.
They
No, they
didn't.
didn't.
They
Oh
lost in
gosh, I went to
overtime.
bed. I went to bed when it was overtime, but I
Yeah.
thought I heard enough like when I was going to sleep that
Uh,
Stars pulled it off. But oh
no,
gosh,
they're winning 3-0 and they lost
darn
4-3 in
it!
overtime.
And that was
So
home. They played at home
they
too.
played at
So
home. Yeah.
oh.
Yeah. So we
All
enjoy
right.
the games, and it can be very expensive. But hey, if you want to
Hey,
come to Dallas and you want to go see some professional sports, you want to take a client to a cool experience, get creative, go take them out to a cricket game or a professional lacrosse game, or get season tickets to the esports stadium up in Frisco. You can have a great time. So I thought that was fun to actually look and see what all Dallas has to offer. I love Dallas.
And I'm
Uh,
sure before we know, there'll be some kind of pickleball team.
yeah,
That
yeah.
happens with all the pickleball
Yeah,
publicity. So
pickleball, cornhole. They've got them. There's all sorts of stuff on ESPN that they figure out how to do. Yeah, not to mention we actually have 2 PGA Tour stops here, so there's a lot of the professional sports, and then you got the NASCAR track out in near Ennis, and not Ennis, but Fort Worth area. So yeah, it's a fun place to live. Grew up in Austin, Amarillo, then Austin, and then went to school out in Los Angeles. Lived in Denver for a year, Podunk, Louisiana for 9, and back in Dallas. And of all of them, I would pick Dallas. I really, really, really enjoy it here. I think it's great. And we've said before, the thing that I think is lacking is sort of the natural resources. We don't have the mountains. We don't have the ocean. We have some hiking, but not a ton of hiking. And it's, miserably hot at points in the year. So that's definitely the downside.
well,
But
we have a major airport and we have
yes,
great, road infrastructure, so it's
yep.
easy to travel.
We can
So
go. We can go other places cheaply, as noted by my round trip ticket to Denver a couple weeks ago. Round trip, $141,
yeah,
all
well, and
taxes and
being
fees and all that.
3 hours from either coast,
Pretty awesome.
is easy.
And
And
Cancun.
yeah, don't
Yeah,
forget the
yeah,
the Latin countries.
yeah.
So
So let's transition into a little bit of real estate talk. And normally Tavis and I do a pregame, and we say, "Hey, what are we going to talk about?" And I forgot to tell you this, but you are going to witness Tavis's ability to just talk real estate. because so
I'm sure
um,
my wife is listening now and rolling her eyeballs. I'm sure.
nah,
So
no, you're super talented. This is kind of our normal conversation on a Tuesday. I'll just call up and say, "Man, what about this?" So this is more like that. So the condo I have a contract on right now with some clients. We got our inspection yesterday, and it didn't go great. I'm a little concerned it might fall through. They're worried about the condition of the air conditioning, and rightly so. There were several things that came up on the inspection. I sent it to Tavis and said, "Hey, give me your 2 cents on this." And so there's some questions on the inspection. There's the differential between temperatures on the register and what it should be from the outside. The ambient temperature outside is supposed to be a certain threshold, and it wasn't. There's some possible foundation issues that I'm going to go walk today just to try to get a feel for that they're concerned about. And with the condo, it's not as straightforward as like, hey, let's fix the foundation, because it's connected to other things, and there's the roof is other people's too, and you can't just go start fixing stuff, and it's complicated. And so I'm a little concerned that my folks, they're in New Jersey, they're just concerned enough that they may want to look at something else. But it brings up this whole concept of inspectors. And we've talked about inspectors before. I've asked Tavis, okay, who's your go to inspector? Well, he doesn't necessarily have one. And as I told my people from New Jersey, I was like, kind of have a love hate relationship with inspectors because I flip and I, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of bad inspections. And also, I have buyers that need an inspector, and you want a good person. But I've never landed on just my go-to person. And so, I just want to talk a little bit about the inspection process, some of the pros and cons of different things, and kind of what people should look for, and how you can interpret some inspections because there's code, and then there's what's acceptable and that sort of thing. So, Tavis, why don't you just talk a little bit about the basics of Trek inspectors are licensed and stuff like that. So when you're on the end of being a buyer and you're wanting to go through due diligence and you hire an inspector, kind of what are the things you're looking for and what you should expect?
There's a million different inspectors out there and inspection companies, and the price ranges are uh, pretty significant as well, as far as how much spread they can be between them. At the end of the day, if you're a licensed real estate inspector by TREC, Texas Real Estate Commission, they have a protocol that they follow, and those forms are basically, it's a promulgated form that is, a format for inspections, and it goes through, anything from, structural, to getting into, all your mechanicals, your HVAC, your plumbing, um, as well as electrical. And
They don't always do
so,
pools. They're not
they all
specialists.
kind of have the same format. So
Yeah.
every inspector is going to kind of look at the same things, but they all have different ways to go about it. And of course, the inspectors, I can't remember exactly what it takes to be an inspector these days, as far as the years of experience. And I think you have to shadow or be an apprentice to somebody for a while before you can get on board. It's very similar to like an appraisal kind of
Mm-hmm.
process, um, and have some kind of professional history beforehand. And over the years, we obviously see inspectors that are better at certain things than others, right? Maybe they were a plumber before, maybe they were an electrician before, maybe they were a city inspector before, um, maybe they were worked for an engineering firm. So they all have a different kind of skill set that they're coming into it, and then they follow a format. Um, I think so. I'm going to call you out because I think I know the answer, and maybe I'm wrong. And I know your schedule, and I know what you're up against. But one of the things that I get frustrated about all the time when I'm selling a home and an inspection happens on the property is they put out a report, and the report comes back, and if depending on the situation, how good the agent is, and what the buyers want to do, they send over a whole report, right? Or they send over like all of these things,
Yep.
and they may not be explained very well. And how you can overcome that is by being at the site with the inspector for the last 30 minutes, and then physically walk the property with them and go over the deficient items that they find. That is the best way as a professional agent. And I always coach my buyers in the past to show up there and be there for the last 30 minutes, because of what your lack of knowledge may be. When you're interpreting what's on a report, it can be very intimidating. And the inspector has to follow a set of guidelines that ranges, based on what new building codes are for a 2024 build. And they have to document these informations because they don't have a specific inspection report that varies from age of home. So when
Mm-hmm.
they inspect a home based on 2024 brand new build, their guidelines of what they're inspecting is the same on something they're going to inspect from a home built in 1950.
Yep.
And so therefore, a lot of things that weren't even developed or part of a building code or even thought about being done. For instance, just to bring up a part of your inspection report, was having outlets that are only two-prong
Yep.
outlets. It did not have a ground plug in them. Well, you can put a ground plug in, which I think they flagged a couple of those outlets in your property because they had a grounded plug outlet that was installed, but when they plugged in their little meter, there was no ground. So most likely there was not a ground wire that was ran with that wire internally in the structure of the home. So therefore there's not a ground, right? Well, based on the age of the home that was built, that wasn't even developed yet. They weren't even running wire at that point in time that had grounded plugs. That developed later. And you can put a GFCI plug in, which is a ground fault circuit interrupter that allows a ground to be tripped, or it gives you a ground plug. And mind you, I'm not a licensed electrician, so maybe I'm speaking out of term here, but essentially the only way to do that without rewiring the whole circuit is to take a ground wire from the GFCI outlet and then ground it to something that's metal inside the wall. And most of your receptacle boxes now, the old homes typically were metal, so you can sometimes get away with putting a lead wire off of a metal receptacle box
Yeah.
to your to your outlet, or to the GFCI, and that will technically work as a ground. But a lot of new homes, right, are all done with plastic receptacle boxes. So if by chance that there was a plastic receptacle box added, and you're not going to be able to get a ground out of it. So
Yeah.
in some cases, there's things like that happen that the inspector brings up, and it's just not practical to update it to whatever the inspector flags it for. So I think it's very important to be there. And the reason I was saying that to you is I doubtfully believe that you were there the
No.
last 30 minutes of the inspection.
No, that's one of the downsides of having to work full time. It's like if I can coordinate it, then great. But part of that
Right.
was, the buyers ordered it and they just said,
Right.
"Hey,"
And then the buyers weren't there either, right?
Yeah,
So
they're out of
if
town.
the agent can't be there, I always try to get the buyer to be there, but sometimes it's just not physically possible.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, now you're left, you get the inspection report, now you're reviewing it with your client, and now you're left to interpret what is in a basically a flat piece of paper.
Yep. Pictures. They
Not
take
even
a few pictures.
it's a one-dimensional piece of paper that you're now interpreting
Yep.
what the inspector is trying to say when he's flagging, potential foundation issues in a condo, that has an attached slab along with other units. And so when these things happen, the inspector is basically covering his ass, right?
Yeah.
He's CYA in the document to say, hey, there's some slopes here. I'm calling it out. I don't know why it's here, but it's here. And, there might be some movement. Okay.
Yep.
Well, now you're going to physically go walk it and basically be responsible for giving your opinion. But at the end of the day, the only true opinion that can dictate if a home has structural issues or not is a professional, licensed engineer.
Yeah.
And you're talking that number is going to start at like $600 and go up.
Yeah.
So sometimes these things really cause a kink in the system because you could walk it and you're like, man, I don't see any cracks anywhere. There's a couple doors that are out of whack. It could have been a carpenter that replaced the door and did a crappy job installing it. It could be a strike plate that needs to be adjusted, in the door on how things open and close. He mentioned in that report that the slopes, in the floor, he kind of walked it and felt like, it might be sloping a little bit. Those things freak people out.
Yeah.
And you've got somebody without a licensed professional opinion in that field, but he's going to call it out and make the note to protect himself.
Yeah.
But now it creates all of this chaos
Yep.
on your end. And because you weren't physically there and the buyer wasn't physically there, now you're left to interpret the information. Most inspectors will let you call them, but now you're going to call the inspector and go, hey, what did you see here? What do you think?
Yeah.
And he's going to be limited on what he can tell you. So now you're almost in this predicament where you have to get a licensed engineer to come out and evaluate it. Most likely, in my professional opinion and my experience, there's not any adjustments that are going to be called out by the engineer. From the information I'm reading and seeing,
Right.
and the pictures that were on the report, there wasn't a lot there to signify to me that there needs to be something.
No big cracks, no structural that you could see.
Take it a step further. You get an engineer out there, you spend the money, they come out, and let's say that they need to do some adjustments. Well, now it's a condo, right?
Yeah.
And so the condo is technically governed by the homeowners association for blanket homeowners insurance that covers that slab is attached to other units.
Mm-hmm.
So now essentially if there is work that needs to be done, you now have to get the other units on board to do this. And this is probably not something that the HOA will cover specifically. Depending on the situation, it may or may not. Every homeowners association for condos are different than another one. But now you have to go to the neighbor who it may be a rental, it may be an investor that owns that unit next door, it may be an elderly lady that's on a fixed income or man that has no capital to do any improvements, and so it creates this kind of like
Yeah.
this friction without a solution,
Well, and at
and
that
that's the
point,
problem.
they're probably just walking away, and that's the sort of the friction point of they've already spent enough money on their option money. Now they paid for the inspection. Maybe they'll get an engineer, but then to what end? Not to mention the AC. So not to be just specific about mine, but so best practices. Let's talk about that. I know we're kind of running up on time, but I just kind of want to talk about best practices with inspectors. So I think it's a great idea, and for sure I in the future need to make more of an effort to be on site during inspections. I've done it before, and it's just something that if you can work out, try to be there. Try to find an inspector obviously that has a lot of good reviews, because agents want to use them again. If someone does a good enough job to go out and out over and over and over, and they've been in business a while, they probably do a decent job. Some of these guys, it does seem like they point out every little bitty thing just to make sure that they're covered. And this person didn't seem to do that as much. It seemed to be pretty high level of, hey, these are some decently major things. And you agreed on a lot of the stuff that they pointed out. But so best practice is finding someone who has, a lot of reviews, been in business a while, they've had some repeat business from other agents, getting a recommendation from another agent. But also knowing that during that option period, that Trek inspector is not the only inspector that you can bring out. You can bring out the engineer, which, like you said, probably costs around $600. We always try to avoid hiring a foundation company to come out because they're there to sell work. Even if they say, well, we'll come out for, $99 and do I literally had a foundation company come out and do that one time. He didn't even go in the house. He walked around the house and on his hand wrote out in pen how many piers he thought he was going to need. And turns out he just divided the perimeter by however many feet they do it. And he's like, oh, you need 25 piers.
Yeah, every
And
6 feet.
yeah, I was like, this is my quote. It was so weird, but that was him. It was like, well, this is worthless for me. But you can hire an AC company to come out, and again, they're probably going to want to sell some work. But when they're coming out for an inspection, they know there's a really good chance they're not actually going to get the work. So if you have someone that would charge you, it's not the worst thing ever. But getting a foundation quote from someone, I just don't trust those. But getting an AC company to come out and say, what would it take? Is this unit even salvageable? Is it, for some reason, I trust that a little bit more. But you can bring a roofer out. You can bring a specialty pool company out to do all this. During your option period, you can do anything.
Right.
And so take advantage of the idea that you can go to walk at that house every day if you want to during that period. And it's yours to just get a good feel for it. But Texas does license a set of inspectors, the Trek licensed inspector. So you want to make sure that, you're always going to start out with that. That being said, best practices as an agent, and I know this is one of Tavis's pet peeves, is as a buyer, if you receive an inspection report and you're an agent for a buyer, don't immediately turn around and send that to the listing agent. And always ask, do you want me to send you this report? Because any information that they have, they actually have to disclose in the future. So if for some reason your deal falls through, now all of a sudden they have to start the next transaction by disclosing, hey, this foundation problem was found, blah, blah, blah. And they may not really want that information,
Well, and I want to say this too. If you have so good practices for agents is find 3 good inspection companies that you do business with that you have good reviews and good history and a good rapport with communication to the client. That's huge. Being able to relay the information, the facts, and be able to explain why, for instance, arc fault circuit interrupters come up on every inspection report these days, and arc faults were not a standard practice to put in new homes prior to, I don't know, 2013 maybe. And so being able to explain that, and show that it's not something that you can just go and retrofit a panel necessarily, because the way that the wiring is done in a home is done differently today than it was done back then. A lot of times things were daisy chained together, meaning that room by room was connected, and so it's not an individual circuit that's going from bedroom to the panel. And so those arc faults don't work exactly the same if you try to retrofit the panel. So um, it's that knowledge and that explanation that, hey, I have to put it in the report, but this is why. So that is good information to kind of know when you're choosing inspectors or you're referring inspectors. At the end of the day, it's up to the consumer to choose the right inspector for them. And so having 3 that you can refer out and say, hey, here's your options with this.
I did do that right. I sent them 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. And then I think, again, it's just important to tee up your client ahead of time to say, hey, this is what they're going to do, this is what they're going to look at. These are the things that we're going to do. But at the end of the day, we can line up 3 inspectors, do 3 inspections on the house, and there's going to be 3 different reports. And that's something to keep in mind. Like everybody, it's still a professional opinion based on their knowledge, based on their interpretation of the guidelines on what they're going to put on that report. So that's the issue that you run into. And knowing it from the backside of all the homes that I've sold, especially flips and renovations, I get all kinds of different, inspection reports over the years, right? All different kinds of opinions, and things that get missed and things that just get marked. One of the last properties I did it in Wiley. I was telling you about it. I was so frustrated because I got this inspection report, or I got these actually requests. They didn't send me the full report. And then I asked for more specific information because I was confused. And, in this particular home, we changed all the plugs and switches in this home to new plugs and switches that are called tamper resistant. And it got flagged that there was 1 or more plugs that weren't tamper resistant. And I was like, uh-oh, which ones did my guys miss? Because I was about to call my electricians, pissed off. And when I called that inspector, he's like, oh, I just put that in my report. It's not something that's common. It's just it's something that commonly gets reported because it's a new code issue, and this was a home built in the 2000s and it wasn't required then. I'm like, but we did it.
Right.
like we actually have tamper resistant plugs, and it's
that's
labeled.
ridiculous.
If you look at the plug, it says TR, right? So it's not something that you have to physically plug into every outlet. It literally says on the outlet TR for tamper resistant. So that kind of stuff frustrates the heck out of me. But again, it comes down to interpretation. It comes down to the communication with the consumer. It comes down to just being able to explain and break things down.
Yep.
And the other thing is the expectations, setting up the expectations correctly for the investor or the buyer. And so in this case, it is an investor buyer buying this property. I don't know how competitive it was to the listing price. And I know that from your information you gave me before, in this particular case, the seller is an investor as well, right?
Yeah.
So setting up those expectations to the consumer that's buying the property to say what's likely going to be the negotiation in this situation of what the seller's willing to do. The seller, as an investor, is not willing to go back and retrofit things that were not essentially, built with the home, right? Like the 2-wire plugs. That investor is going to say, nope, sorry, it's grandfathered in. It works fine. It's not causing any problems. I'm not fixing it. Now, you have an argument with the AC. You have an argument with the plumbing issues. You have an argument with some of those deferred maintenance things that you can push back on that, investor to say, hey, my guy wants to buy this property at this value. You're making a profit, and they don't want this headache on them, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're buying it at a good discount and they know they're buying it in the as-is condition. You have more of an argument with that. You get into the structural stuff, you're going to have some pushback because, again, it's an opinion that's not super validated. That's why the engineer report's important. You can get a foundation company out there, but then they can turn around and get a foundation company that they've worked with before that will come out and say it doesn't need any work.
Sure.
And now you just got 2 people that are in the industry that have a different opinion that both came out for free that are telling you two different things. So which one's right?
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
at least if you pay the money for an engineer, now the only way to contest that is to pay another engineer to come out and contest it that way.
Yeah.
So,
and there's
it's
only so
something just
many
to keep in
engineers
mind.
out there. So yeah, we use two of them. Well, cool. No, I knew you had a lot to say. I know we've talked about inspections somewhat before, but it's pertinent to me right now. And it's just one of those things that I'm always learning, like comps. You know, you're learning how to do this part better. I did a good job of setting expectations. They, you know, they bought houses before. They kind of knew what was coming up, you know, and I even laid out to the agent, you know, when we were making an offer, like, you know, we're asking for a discount. We're not going to come nitpick every little bitty, you know, thing that's just slightly crooked or whatever. We're going to go after things that are legit. And I actually told that to my seller or my buyers too. Like, hey, we're getting somewhat of a discount. When we get this inspection, let's really concentrate on the things that are safety issues, code, real things. And they were on board with that. And I think that they've honored that to say, hey, these are the things that are really important to us. So I think having some of those conversations on my side and with the other agent going into it, you know, one time, you know, and I know we need to close up, but the frustrating part to me one time is I had an agent say, oh yeah, I mean, I rarely ever ask for anything. Well, then they came in and like literally asked for everything. And so when they set that expectation, and then a week later, there's a 24-point list that involves putting a slat back up on the back fence that's slightly crooked. It's not really a huge deal. You know, it really frustrates you as an agent. But trying to do it the right way, but also do what's right by your buyers. You want them to get a good product, and you, especially with them being out of town, I want to do the best I can for them and represent them well and all that, and try to balance that out. But you know, get the deal done. It would benefit everyone to just get this deal done, move on, get them into the investment world. They can start making money. This seller can sell. He wants a 1031, move on, and we can all just kind of do our jobs. But if it's not a great deal for them and it's not a great investment, then, you know, we'll start over. So, well, that is today's show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We do this every Friday. We also have a lot of interviews that we're putting out. So please look back. We've had a ton of interviews at this point, and we've got one coming up this next week with our friend Ricardo, who's in the credit business, and really, really interesting conversation about the credit world, what goes into building your credit, tons of stuff I had no idea about. So please pay attention to that one. If you have not yet, like, subscribe, share this with a friend, find us on YouTube, and we would love you forever for it. And until next Tuesday, when you will hear from us again, I hope you have a great day.